Chapter 11. Strange New World. March 1997, Chicago. It was 1:30 in the afternoon when our flight from Amsterdam touched down in Chicago. As we entered the terminal, all the voices around us spoke in a rapid, confusing language as they hurried by. Everyone seemed to know where to go, and they were going fast. Alma and I were like minnows trying to swim amidst the school of frenzied salmon. Someone from the organization sponsoring us, World Relief, was supposed to meet our flight. We carried a blue and white bag to help the representative identify us. When no one came up to greet us, we took a seat in the boarding area and waited patiently for more than an hour. Still no one came. Maybe we're not in the right place, I suggested. Let's walk around the terminal. Perhaps the people will see our bag. Alma agreed. Carrying Sandra in one arm, she grabbed my hand. I rolled what little luggage we had behind me. Suddenly, the suitcase no longer wanted to follow. Alma, wait, there's something wrong with the suitcase. She stopped and then let out a long sigh. Here, she said, thrusting Sandra into my arms. What happened? The bag split open. We've left a trail of diapers and clothes behind us. A familiar feeling of helplessness washed over me as I listened to my wife scoop up our meager belongings. I could sense the stares of passers-by and knew Alma must be embarrassed at having to clean up our mess. Once again, I cursed my blindness. I should be the one down on the ground picking things up, leading my family through this new and perplexing place. Alma, having apparently wrangled everything back together, took Sandra from me and placed the luggage handle back in my grasp. Once again we traveled through the airport, little fish in the big sea, but there was no one there to throw us a life preserver. We were on our own. I don't know what to do, said Alma, resignation in her voice. They were supposed to be here to meet us. Why don't we get something to eat? I suggested. We did pass a McDonald's, said Alma. Good, let's go. Maybe they will see us sitting there with our blue and white bag. Alma led us to a table outside the fast food store, and I sat with Sandra, trying to keep her from fussing too much. Several minutes later, Alma sat down, and I smelled the undeniably enticing aroma of French fries. I reached toward the smell and grabbed a couple of fries for Sandra, who squealed in delight. Oh, Mettco, Alma sighed, placing an unwrapped burger within my reach. I don't know if we made the right decision. Everything. Her voice cracked. It's all so confusing. I just feel so lost. I hated to hear the discouragement in her voice. I took a bite of my Big Mac. At that moment, nothing seemed as important as satisfying my hunger. You didn't have a difficult time ordering, did you? I asked. We had McDonald's at home, and I knew she could just point to a picture of what she wanted even if she didn't know any English. Oh, ordering the food wasn't the problem. It was paying for it. But we have American money, I protested. Alma gave a little laugh. Yes, too much money. All I had was $100 bill. When I handed it to the woman, she said something to me and handed it back. I couldn't imagine what was wrong, so I pushed the bill back to her. Then she left and got someone else, the manager, I guess. He tried telling me what the problem was, but when I just shrugged my shoulders, he must have figured out I didn't understand English. Finally, he just gave me this. Alma took my hand and put a fistful of money in it. Now, instead of one big bill, we have lots of little ones, she said, and we both laughed. After the long, tedious flight, the disappointment of not being met, all the stress, laughing felt good. An hour later, long after we had finished our first American meal, still no one had come to collect us. Mettco, Alma said finally. I see some telephones. I think I should go call Aunt Zina. I stayed at the table and cuddled and cooed to my daughter as we waited. After several minutes, I heard Alma's now familiar footsteps. She sat down heavily and I could almost smell her distress. "What did they say?" I asked. I never even placed the call. All the instructions for using the phones were written in English, but I put in my coins anyway and dialed the number. Instead of being connected to Aunt Zina, a woman's voice came on the line, probably giving me more instructions, but I couldn't understand what she was saying. I put in the coins again, but they just came back out. By this time, a line of people had started to form behind me, so I just took my change and left. We sat there, dejected and depressed, utterly alone in a foreign country, unable to understand anything, at a loss as to what to do. This was not the way we had envisioned our first day in America, our new home. "Come on," said Alma, "let's walk around some more. Maybe someone will notice our bag and help us find the right people." We walked around the terminal aimlessly for the next half hour. Suddenly, I heard a gasp escape from Alma. "Mettco, I can't believe it. There's Toda." "Toda? Are you sure?" Toda was a friend of ours who had emigrated from Bosnia to the US a couple of months ago, but we had no idea he was in Chicago, and bumping into him at the airport seemed impossibly coincidental. "Yes, that's Toda. He's wearing a uniform and pushing a wheelchair." "Toda! Toda!" Alma shouted. And then I heard one of the most beautiful sounds of my entire life, the words of a friend spoken in my own language. I felt the grasp of a firm handshake and then a hug. "Mettco, what the heck are you guys doing here?" asked Toda. Alma and I rushed to explain, tripping over each other's words. After listening to us for several minutes, Toda placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Listen, I have to get back to my job," he said. "I help passengers who need a wheelchair get around the airport. It's a good job. I don't want my boss to see me goofing off, but don't worry, I can find someone to help you. In fact, Alma, I know people who also know your uncle. I will get a hold of them. Just wait here, and I'll make sure they find you." Sometime later, more friendly voices greeted us, the people who knew Alma's uncle. They packed us into their car, and we set off for the apartment building in North Chicago where Aunt Zina and Uncle Pico lived. However, when we got there, we learned that they had moved out. I was starting to think Alma and I had made a very foolish choice in coming to America, but our new friends were not about to give up. They managed to get the new phone number for Zina and Pico and called them. Though surprised to hear we had arrived, Uncle Pico said he would be over to pick us up. What seemed hours later, a tiny Geo pulled up to the North Chicago apartment where we waited. Uncle Pico and another distant cousin of Alma's, Milka, had finally come to rescue us. We would find out later that the people from the organization that was supposed to help us had mistakenly thought we were arriving a day later, which explained why no one had been at the airport to meet us. We were to experience many difficulties in the days to come, and unfortunately this organization was of no help to us. We knew many of the people who worked in this organization had sympathized with our enemies back home, and we wondered if the political problems from which we were trying to escape had followed us to America. However, we were lucky to have Aunt Zina and Uncle Pico to help us, for just months earlier they had gone through all of the steps we now needed to take, and Milka, who had lived in the US for 17 years, could translate everything we needed. As we drove from North Chicago to Melrose Park, a suburb west of the city, Alma described to me the wonderful new sight she saw: a lake as big as an ocean, skyscraper after skyscraper lighting the city sky, huge highways going this way and that. I took in every description thirstily. It was far past supper time. when we pulled up in front of Aunt Zina and Uncle Fico's apartment. Uncle Fico escorted us up the steps, where Aunt Zina greeted us with a warm hug. "You must be worn out," she said sympathetically. "Come, sit at the table and have something to eat." We sat down, thankful to finally have reached our destination. I don't remember what we ate that evening, but it was warm and familiar and comforting. After we had finished, Aunt Zina ushered us to one of the 2 bedrooms in their tiny apartment. "This is your room while you are here," she said. Then she took my hand and led me down the hall to the 1 bedroom they had, so I would be able to find it on my own. Aunt Zina insisted on taking Sandra for the night so we could enjoy a sound sleep, and Alma gratefully agreed. Together, she and I sank into bed and held each other under the soft covers. We had literally run to the other side of the world to escape the nightmares that plagued us in Bosnia. Only time would tell if we had gone far enough. Chapter 12. The Verdict. March 1997. Chicago Alma and I sat in the small living room of the apartment of her uncle and aunt. I played with Sandra while Alma folded clothes and watched an American soap opera on TV. Neither of us could understand much of what was said, but at least Alma could see the picture and try to match the words to the actions. "What's happening?" I asked. I thought if maybe I knew what was being beamed across the airwaves, I would pick up a word or 2. "I'm not sure," said Alma. 2 women are arguing, probably about that man who was just there. But he got very angry and left. It looks like they're at a church because there's a casket, but I don't know who's dead." I heard footsteps and Zina's hearty laugh. "Alma, you're never going to get the laundry done that way," she said, but her words were kind. Alma replied softly, "I know, Aunt Zina, but it's all so interesting. Even though I don't understand the words, I get caught up in the drama. Some situations don't need explaining." "English is not an easy language to learn," replied Zina, "so don't get discouraged. Watching TV might help you, but you really need instruction. Once we get you all settled, Fico and I are going to make sure you get the English classes you need. There's a church not very far from here that offers tutoring for free. You just have to fill out paperwork. You could even walk there together on good days." The very thought of taking a class that would help us brightened my spirits immensely. In the few days since our arrival, Alma and I realized that no one here spoke our language, unless they themselves were refugees from our part of the world. Thank God for Zina and Fico. They explained everything in a way that didn't make us feel stupid. There was just so much to learn. "I want to learn English," said Alma hesitantly, "but I don't know if I would feel comfortable just walking into a place where I didn't know anyone." "If you want, we can have someone come to the apartment and give you and Mettco your first few lessons," Aunt Zina suggested. "Oh, that would be wonderful," said Alma, her relief evident. "Everything is so different here. We feel so lost." "I know just what you mean," said Aunt Zina, and her voice held genuine warmth and compassion. "Coming to a new place is very difficult. When I first got here, I think I cried for a week straight. Poor Fico didn't know what to do with me. I missed my family so badly, I was ready to sell everything we'd brought with us and ship myself back to Bosnia." She laughed softly at the memory. "Me and Fico will make sure you're all right. We'll make sure." Fico worked the 3rd shift at the nearby factory owned by Zenit, so he often would sleep during the day. Still, he cut his sleep short on several days to help Alma and me apply for the monetary assistance we needed, to get social security numbers, and to follow up on all of the other legal stuff that made no sense to us. Zina took Alma and Sandra to the grocery store where they would play a game as they shopped. Alma would pick up an item and say its name in Bosnian. Then Zina would pronounce the English word, which Alma would repeat. Sometimes Alma would put an item in her cart, and Zina would sadly shake her head and put it back on the shelf. She explained to Alma that food stamps bought only so much and only certain items. Alma later told me that she had made it her goal to one day walk into a grocery store and put whatever she wanted in her cart. About this time, we also found our own apartment. It was good to be on our own, although we had enjoyed being a part of a larger family, just like at home. Aunt Zina and Uncle Pico had been so good to us. We never would have survived without their help. But it was time to learn to swim on our own. And true to their generous nature, Zina and Pico were already expecting new arrivals from Bosnia, people like us who needed a place to land and the support of loving relatives. Our first English teacher came in the person of Mark, an older man who volunteered through the church. Twice a week, he climbed the steps up to our apartment to introduce us to English. On those evenings, Alma would make dinner for everyone, and Mark would focus on teaching us the words for everyday things: fork, knife, meat, potatoes, milk, water, and so forth. He'd even help clean up, washing dishes as I dried, handing me a plate, a cup, a pen, and pronouncing the English word for the object. Afterward, he would sit with Alma and Sandra and count fingers and toes in English. He had the patience of a saint. This went on for several weeks until Mark suggested we knew enough to go to the classes at the church. So we ventured off to our first class with other immigrants from many different countries, all of them with the same wish we held, to be an American. These classes were more intensive, with written homework we would have to have finished by the next class. Alma wrote for both of us, and although the work was difficult, we worked hard. Zina and Pico helped us too and told us many times what good progress we were making. We needed the encouragement. Milka came over often and helped us in those ways that Zina or Pico couldn't. Since she had lived in the US much longer, she could better explain all the workings of our new world, all those procedures or requirements that seemed so mystifying to us. One day she asked us whether I had seen any American doctors yet. No, I said, but I want to. That's one reason we wanted to come here. America has the best doctors, the biggest hospitals, the latest equipment. If anyone can help me get my sight back, it must be the doctors in this country. I don't know, but we can try, said Milka cautiously. Let's find a doctor and take you in for a visit. But we don't know how much it costs to go to the doctor, worried Alma. We don't buy groceries or clothes without knowing how much we're spending. Why isn't it the same with the doctor? What if we can't afford it? Let's not worry about that right now, said Milka. There are ways to pay. We can figure that out later. The most important thing is to get Mettco to the right doctor. As we lay in bed that night, Alma and I talked about my regaining my sight. In our hearts, neither of us had accepted my blindness as a permanent disability. We clung to the hope that in America, where we believed anything was possible, the doctors would be able to give back to me at least some sight. Over the next several weeks, Milka drove me and Alma to visit several different doctors. Alma and Milka filled out forms, and I underwent all sorts of tests. No one would tell me whether I would be able to see again until my final appointment on Alma's birthday, April 29th. We sat silently in the waiting room. I felt tense, on edge, knowing my fate would be delivered to me in just a few minutes. I still hoped for those words that would set my heart free, but even then I think I knew what I would hear. A woman's voice said, "Sabic," and we stood. Alma guided me down a hallway and into an examination room. A few minutes later, the doctor came in. With Milka translating, the doctor asked me a few questions and then asked me to perform several different exercises. I did each with growing optimism. Surely he wouldn't put me through this if there weren't some hope. And then I heard the doctor lay down his tools, and the room went still. My stomach dropped. The doctor spoke, and Milka translated slowly, the words slipping into my mind like little slivers of pain, each syllable's its own dagger. I barely felt Alma's hand on my arm or the ground beneath my feet as the two women guided me out of the office and back to Milka's car. I heard Alma's crying and felt Milka's disappointment. I feared my response, the one I knew would eventually descend on me. At some point, this bitter, silent pain inside me would explode. For now, I sat silently in the car, passive, remote, completely alone, in what had been diagnosed as my irreversible blindness. Chapter 13. School for the Blind. September 1997, Chicago. The days following that doctor's final pronouncement were the darkest of my life. A beast raged inside me, one filled with bitterness and despair. I saw no point of even trying anymore. One of the reasons we had come to the other side of the world was to get my sight back. Hope of that had died. But my desolation went beyond my own problems. I had a wife and daughter whom I loved deeply. How was I supposed to provide for or take care of them now? Not only was I blind, we lived in a country where I didn't speak the language, understand the customs, or have a marketable skill. My anger and frustration made me difficult to be around. I helped Alma very little. Instead, I would sit for hours brooding, often drinking to excess, hoping to dull my pain. I had no focus, no ambition, no goal. It was Milka who finally forced me out of my self-induced haze. She knew what I was doing. Evidently, she'd seen others self-destruct, give up on life, and she was determined not to let me travel down that road. One day, Milka came into our apartment and turned off the TV, my constant companion. "Mettco, I've brought you something," she said, and I felt a smooth wooden shaft thrust into my hand. "What's this?" I said, sneering. "A cane? Let me see. I know I can use it to play pool." I slid the cane back and forth across the knuckles of my hand as though lining up a shot. "Or maybe I'll use it to play golf." Recklessly, I swung the cane as if hitting a ball, with no consideration that I might knock something onto the floor. "All right, smarty, maybe you can't play golf with it, but you can get around." "Really? Is this a magic cane? Like a magic carpet? Will it take me wherever I want to go?" "Very funny, Mettco, you have to do the work. But the cane is a tool that will help you. Go for a walk and try it out. Soon you will be much more self-sufficient, and then you can start making some progress." "Come on, Milka. No cane will help me tell when the light turns green. It will be just a matter of time, before some driver runs me down while I'm crossing the street. I didn't come to this country to commit suicide." "You will learn, Mettco. Others have." Then Milka said something that stung. "Are you telling me other people are smarter and more capable than you are?" When Milka left, the cane stayed behind, but I refused to touch it. I had no faith that it would give me freedom. A few weeks later, I heard the door swing open to Milka's footsteps, followed by other footsteps I didn't recognize. I could tell only that they belonged to a man, someone I didn't know. "Mettco, I have a friend here I'd like you to meet. This is Greg." "Greg, meet Mettco." I rose and extended my hand for Greg to shake. A moment passed before I felt the other man's firm grasp. That was odd, I thought. Why had Greg hesitated, and who is this guy? We sat down, and with Milka translating, Greg started the conversation. "So Milka tells me you're having a hard time accepting your blindness." This shut me up for a minute. Then I realized the guy was probably some kind of therapist or counselor, here as a favor to Milka, here to fix me. "Yeah, it's hard to accept that I won't be able to do so many things I used to do. I feel like a child again, helpless." My candidness surprised me. I hadn't intended to be so open. You don't have to be helpless, Mettco. That's your choice. Easy for you to say when you can see your way around. A slight pause followed this challenge. I figured I'd made him mad, but his next words were soft, kind. Milka didn't tell you? I'm blind, Mettco. Now it was my turn to say nothing. I couldn't believe that this articulate man, a stranger who had walked into my house on his own, could not see. Greg, I know you mean well, but what? You don't think I'm really blind? Do you want me to prove it to you? That stopped me. How would he do that? Here, he said, and Milka reached out for my hand, which he touched to his. Carefully, he put 2 round slippery objects into my hand. These are my eyes. I didn't know what to say, so I fumbled out an apology. I'm sorry, Don't worry about it, Mettco. I heard a smile in his voice. Really, I get around just as well as most people with vision. Sometimes better, I think. My hearing has grown immensely to make up for my lack of sight. I take the subway here, cross streets, hail taxis. His words stunned me. It takes time, but you can learn to do the same thing. I have a family too, Mettco, and even though I am blind, I still provide for them, take care of them. Being blind doesn't rob you of that. For the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny seed of hope planted within my chest. There's an amazing school for the blind here, Mettco. Maybe it's not a coincidence you ended up in this city. Greg and I talked for a long time. He told me some inspiring stories about people who had lost their sight, but still lived productive, successful, even happy lives. By the time he left, I had made up my mind. I would apply to the school for the blind. I would learn how to make my way in this new land, with or without sight. The first time I applied at ICRE, the Illinois Center for Rehabilitation Education, I was not accepted. I applied over the phone, and the woman on the other end had difficulty understanding my broken English. I knew how to give my address, phone number, birth date, and birthplace, but could say little else in English. The woman sighed and told me to try again when my English was better. And so I continued to work on my English at home with the volunteers who came in to help us. After a few weeks, I applied again to ICRE, but still I did not have a good enough command of the English language. Finally, on January 5th, 1998, on my 3rd try, I was accepted into the blind education program at the center. A door had opened. I was on my way. Going to the school for the blind brought new challenges into my life, but also a chance to regain my self-respect. Some of the classes I took taught me how to navigate in public without the aid of others. Other classes focused on hearing skills or how to relate to the different reactions people have to the handicapped. I worked hard to learn everything I could. It wasn't until 6 months after I entered the school, June 25th, 1998, a day I will never forget, that I took the buses to school by myself. My hand shook a little as I grabbed the rail. My heart thumped as the bus lurched and chugged down busy streets, but I paid attention, listened to the announcements of the stops, and pictured the route in my head. When I stepped off the last bus, it was like being born again. At one point, I thought I would never be able to do something like this, and yet here I stood, in one piece, at my school, having gotten there all on my own. If I had been asked a few weeks earlier, I would have confessed to being more afraid of traveling the streets of Chicago by myself than I had been going off to war. Not anymore. I began to think about the future, about how I could make a living, not only to support my family, but also become a productive member of the community. When I talked with Greg, He had mentioned several jobs he and other blind people he knew had held: radio DJ, nurse, computer technician, factory worker, telemarketer, attorney, small business owner, therapist. This last one caught my attention, and I began to see the possibility of being a massage therapist. This profession relied on the sense of touch, not sight, and I already had much of the necessary knowledge due to my medic training in the war. Massage also appealed to me because I would be helping people. Both Milka and Alma encouraged me to pursue a career as a massage therapist, and so in August 1998, I took a month-long introductory class at a local school. However, once again, I was not accepted into the program because I was not proficient enough in English. The time had come to enroll in a real school to learn the language of our new homeland. From September 1998 to December 1999, I attended the school for English as a second language 3 days a week. Being around people who were in the same situation gave me a sense of confidence and made me want to do well. I was most impressed by the fact that the principal of the school was himself blind and mostly deaf. If a man with those disabilities could still accomplish so much, why couldn't I do the same? Alma didn't go to school but took a job as a checker in a grocery store. She laughed that the store was her second language school, for that's where she learned most of her English. We also found another way to make some money, something we could do together. It started when Alma dropped me off at school one day, and she noticed a sign. "Mettco," she said, poking at the spare tire that had grown around my waist over the last few months. "There's a sign here that promises a way to lose weight, along with an opportunity to make money." "How can that be?" I scoffed. Alma explained that the company offered dietary supplements through individual distributorships. I agreed to try the supplements to help get my weight back down. After a few weeks, we were so impressed with the results, we too became distributors. Fulfilling the orders became a family project, something even Sandra could help with. We had become entrepreneurs. We were pursuing the American dream through hard work and opportunity. We began to feel like we belonged. But there was one day in particular I remember when we felt like we were really becoming Americans. When we had first arrived in the US, Alma would tell me how she often saw people in their cars doing the strangest things as they drove down the highway, putting on makeup, shaving, even changing clothes, and of course always eating something from a fast food restaurant. "These Americans do everything in their cars," she said. "Don't they have 5 minutes to take care of these things at home?" But in working our distributorship, we learned the great American secret, that if you want to get ahead, you run and run and run. One day, as Alma and I were driving all over Chicago delivering the products to our customers, Alma was putting on her earrings, I was helping Sandra with her shoes, and we were all munching on our freshly made whoppers. Finally, we were living the American lifestyle. Chapter 14. Good Times and Citizenship. May 2000, Fort Wayne. In 2000, Alma and I made the decision to move. We had enjoyed Chicago and the opportunities we had found there, but we wanted to live in a smaller city, one that might be better for raising a family. Alma had an uncle who lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We did some research and found that it was a decent-sized city and had been rated as one of the top cities in the US in which to raise a family. With the help of our relatives, we made the move to a nice 2-bedroom townhome. By Fort Wayne standards, our new home was pretty small, but compared to how we had lived in Chicago, our place was like a house, even a villa. For half the price of what living had cost in Chicago, we now had an apartment that was twice the living space. Not long after settling into our new home, I applied to one of the local schools for massage. To my surprise, I was immediately accepted, contingent on passing all the necessary exams, which I did. Vocational Rehabilitation Services agreed to finance my schooling, which would take about 14 months for me to become a certified massage therapist. When I was first introduced to my new teacher Terry, we hit it off right away. Terry had served in the Vietnam War, so he and I had shared similar experiences. He also understood how much I wanted to succeed at this new venture. I didn't know it at the time, but my first day of class would also mark the addition of a new member to our family. When Alma picked me up from school, Sandra had big news for me. "Daddy, we went to the pet store today." "Just to look," interjected Alma. "But while we were looking, we found a dog." "Daddy," said Sandra in girlish excitement, "it's so cute. It's a pomegranate." "Pomeranian," corrected Alma. "And it's waiting there for us right now. Can we get it, Daddy? Please, please?" "It really is cute," said Alma, "but I knew we couldn't make the decision without you." We had talked about getting a pet, and I found I couldn't say no to my little girl. So off to the pet store we went, but when we got there, the glass cage was empty. The Pomeranian had been sold just after they had left. My heart broke for Sandra, but I had forgotten how resilient children are. She took my hand and led me over to where the dog's cages were. "Daddy, there's a puppy here who looks so sad and lonely. Maybe he's the one we're supposed to get." I turned to Alma and could hear the smile in her voice. "He's just a tiny little fuzzball, all white." "Oh, Mettco, it looks so sweet." When the saleswoman brought the puppy out of its cage, he bounded right into my arms. And so we took home a rambunctious Bichon Frise that day, which we named Lassie after the famous movie dog, even though he was a male. Little Lassie could be a troublemaker sometimes, but he brought much happiness to our household. I enjoyed going to school and had the distinction of being the first blind student to be accepted. My teacher and the other students never made me feel inadequate. In fact, everyone was very helpful. One day I found I could return the favor. During a particularly violent storm, the power went out, plunging the room where we were practicing our massage into total darkness. Of course, I didn't know what had happened until the other students started to yell for the lights to come back on. "Hey, what's the problem?" I laughed. "Now we're equal." "Mettco," said Terry, "since you have the advantage over us, would you mind going to the storeroom for the candles?" When I brought them back, without bumping into any furniture, I got a round of applause. We still needed to earn an income, so Alma and I tried our hands at various types of employment and businesses. We looked into selling real estate, and Alma even got her license. But in the wake of the 9/11 tragedy, we did not do well. Alma worked as a sales clerk first for J.C. Penney and then for a chic women's clothing store, advancing into management. We opened a European grocery and then switched it to a furniture store. Not all of our ventures were considered successful, but each attempt taught us something new. I continued my schooling and took care of Sandra, although sometimes I think she took care of me. She was remarkably mature for her age and would often remind me as we were leaving the house, "Did you lock the door? Where is your phone? Don't forget your cane." She and I and Lassie had a lot of fun during those days. Sometimes we would be too wild in our games and get in trouble when Alma came home. But Sandra was a good and loving child who helped me immensely and brought us so much joy. Once I graduated from massage therapy school, I got a job working part-time in a salon. Then a few months later, I opened up my own business, Golden Hands Massage Center, at the local YWCA. While I was thrilled to be in business for myself, money was still tight. There were times during those first years when Alma and I barely had enough to cover our bills. And then we finally found the business that worked for us, a cleaning company. We gave a lot of thought to the name and decided on Silver Lining Cleaning, a name that reflected our optimism. We started out small, but were very successful, and soon were employing others to help us. As I worked for salons and built up my own private clientele, Alma managed the cleaning business. After years of working hard and never giving up, we could finally feel like we had achieved the American dream. On August 31st, 2007, Alma and I climbed into our newly purchased Mercedes-Benz and drove to the Lafayette, Indiana courthouse, where we were two among the 96 people being inducted as official American citizens that day. Many family members were there to support us. Many of the special guests who were invited, professors, successful business people, even the mayor of Lafayette, were naturalized citizens themselves. Their presence sent a message to each of us that day. No matter where you come from or who you are, you can be successful in America. This day will live as one of the most memorable and rewarding in our lives. Afterward, our friends and family threw a party to celebrate, complete with a special cake that displayed the American flag on its frosted top. We were proud of who we were and what we had accomplished. That day, when we recited the words that would make us citizens, we spoke with heartfelt thanks. As the national anthem swelled to fill with room, I put my arm around Alma. Bosnia will always live in my heart, but now we are Americans. We were home. Epilogue. Lying in the hospital after I was first wounded, I couldn't contemplate a future for myself. I could think only of the life I had already led. I was tormented by a question that would not go away. Had I lived a full life, enough to last me for the rest of my sightless days? At that moment, I felt my life was over. I couldn't envision a tomorrow for me, not even one day. How could life possibly have any meaning after I had suffered this terrible disability? As you know from the book, I was fortunate to have the benefit of the love and support of family, friends, and most importantly, Alma. What she did to help me after my accident cannot be measured in words. She is an exceptional person, and I am the luckiest guy on earth to have her as my wife and partner. But even if I had not had Alma, I believe I would have found some way to move forward, at least a little. I have never wanted people to look at me and say how sorry they are or ask me how hard life is. That was one of the things I loved most about Alma. She never pitied me, never talked about what I couldn't do. Instead, she helped me focus on what I could do. With her encouragement, I began to believe all things were possible. To me, that positive attitude is the essence of America. This is a country where anyone can reach any goal if he or she is willing to look forward, to dare to imagine what is possible or even impossible, and then to do what it takes to achieve that goal. Of course, that last part is key. We must be willing to work for our dreams. But in this country, realizing our dream is always within our grasp. Opportunity abounds. It is our responsibility to seize an opportunity and create our own success. I understand this so clearly because of the life I lived in Bosnia. I don't want to give the wrong impression. Life was not so terrible in my home country. It's just that we had little hope and certainly no expectation of following a dream to build personal wealth and success. We knew what life would be like now and forever. In our newly adopted country, Alma and I felt we could achieve something different, something better. That choice was ours to make and to make happen. As immigrants, Alma and I understand the gift of America, that whatever we believe we can achieve. Of course, that doesn't mean success comes easily. We took risks, tried many different kinds of enterprises, suffered losses. But even though we didn't always find success, we kept going. we kept trying. We kept searching for what would be a good fit for us. We were astounded by all the various kinds of employment or business ventures we could pursue, and we finally found what worked for us. This is my message to the people I meet, one that is a bit of a paradox. Although I am blind, I can see opportunities others can't. And in fact, while I would never have chosen my disability, I have gained insight from being blind. More than that, I no longer let my blindness define on what I am. I am whatever I choose to be. Even though I am disabled, I have come to realize I am blessed. But I believe all of us can find something positive in our lives. Give me a few minutes, and I can show anyone how to view life through a different lens. That is my gift, and it is one I share with you. Thank you for being part of this journey through Second Sight, a journey of risk, reward, and redemption. If any part of this story resonated with you, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need it. Even though this was the final chapter of the book, the story doesn't end here. We'll be sharing more content like this. Reflections, personal stories, and conversations about growth, clarity, and transformation. So make sure to subscribe and stay connected. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of something bigger. Out of adversity comes opportunity. I invite you to join me on my continuing journey. As a certified professional life coach, I can help you achieve your goals, realize your dreams, master life's challenges, succeed in every area of your life. The choice is yours. So reach out for the starts. Visit my website to learn more, mettcosabic.com. Follow me on Instagram, Mettco_Sabic_blind_trailblazer, and subscribe to this YouTube channel so you never miss new transformational content that will be posted regularly.